Greetings metalheads, welcome to No Nonsense Metal Reviews. I'm George and I'm back yet again with another collection update. Got a pretty cool assortment of vinyl and CD package to show off today, which covers 3/4 of the US Big Four of thrash metal. So I say 3/4, we're talking some Anthrax, Slayer and a little bit of Metallica thrown in for good measure. Haven't unfortunately picked up any recent Megadeth releases, new or old. Unfortunately, already got all of those and have had all those albums in the collection for a very long time. Eagerly awaiting the new album though. Can't wait for that one. So what I've got here is a little bunch of releases which I'm going to show off and give a little bit of background to as well. Two of the Anthrax vinyls, I've actually got 3 here, but 2 of which I have already very briefly touched on in the recent ranking that I did of Anthrax's full-length studio albums. If you haven't seen that, I'll add a link, of course. That was a particularly challenging album ranking, I will say. Anthrax are a killer band, an absolutely fantastic band. I love Anthrax, and that was a serious challenge because in my opinion, there's no bad Anthrax albums. So even the albums that I ranked a little bit lower down, still absolutely top tier, brilliant albums. This album, released in 2003, entitled We've Come For You All, this one actually did rank quite low down the order in my ranking, I must admit. That said, it's still an absolutely brilliant album. It's the last album to feature the brilliant John Bush on vocals, as in original material sort of stuff here. I think it was after this album they went on and did the Greater of Two Evils. But this is the last kind of full-length album, original material, as I say, new stuff, I should probably point out. But this is a really good album, really nice, recent reissue. So I think it was 2025. Yeah, so this actually came out last year, and I did pick it up not too long after it came out, and it suddenly sort of plummeted in price on Amazon. There's a nice gatefold, and what's really cool, and I didn't actually show off in the album ranking, is the pretty neat, very metal color scheme here. So it's almost like a metallic, transparent vinyl. Little bit of kind of smoke effect in there, or marbled. Don't know if you can really say it's marbled. It's almost like a bit of a smoke sort of effect. But it's a double album. It is actually quite a lengthy one. I think albums, or Anthrax's latter albums, have been generally quite long. But I think this is a fine album. I think that it's a little bit less kind of heavy and punchy than the albums, the John Bush era albums that came before it. But I'd say it's a really well written, great sounding album. There's some really great tracks on there. Now I won't go into too much detail on how I necessarily feel about this album, as I have talked it pretty much to death with my album ranking. However, what I will say is that there are some tracks, if you haven't checked this album out before, there are some moments that you absolutely do need to check out. Notably, I think Superhero is a really catchy, rocky and heavy track there. Refuse to Be Denied is a good one. Safe Home is a bit of a kind of mid-paced track, a pretty big track for the band actually, for Anthrax. It's a good one though. Strap It On, Black Dahlia. Cadillac Rock Box is a little bit of a kind of cheesier rock anthem number, but it's a good one. Taking the Music Back. Yeah, you know what? It's a good album. It's a solid album. I just personally happen to prefer the few albums that came before this. I think they're really top tier. But actually, this is a really good one. I was really surprised after doing the ranking how many responses there were of fans of this album really saying, you know, this is something seriously good. I'm really surprised you didn't rank it higher. And I agree, it's a great album. I just think there's a lot of other brilliant Anthrax albums in their discography to compete with. Up next, something I definitely didn't touch on, as it only arrived shortly after I did the ranking, is this gem. This is one of my favorites. I won't give too many spoilers there, but one of my favorite Anthrax albums. This was released, I believe, in 2011. Hopefully it doesn't actually say on the back of here. This is a 2022 reissue, so it's been around for a few years. Worship Music. This is such a great album. I adore this album, and I do remember, I talked about this in the ranking, when this album came out, there was so much hype. There was so much love for this album. There was a Metal Hammer magazine special on it. It was getting features, lengthy features in the other music magazines, and there was so much praise for it, and with good reason, because it is such a brilliant album. I love it. I think it's a very long album, but it doesn't feel like it outstays its welcome at all. I'd say it really is interesting, diverse, dynamic enough, but it is notably a return to the thrashier sound, whereas in the albums prior to this, in the John Bush era, those albums were very much kind of groove metal orientated, with a little bit of something else kind of thrown in there. You know, maybe like a little bit of hardcore crossover stuff. But this is a very fine album. Gatefold, just briefly pointed that out there. Gatefold, this particular version has a refused cover song, which is New Noise. This version, I don't know if there are other versions out there. Probably are, presumably, because everything in the world seems to get reissued these days in multiple color schemes. This one is just a good old-fashioned black vinyl. There we go. Nice and bold. Just a good old-fashioned black vinyl. Nothing wrong with that. I do like a nice bit of color. You know, I do like a nice color vinyl. But I think there's a lot to be said for just a good old-fashioned black vinyl sometimes. Things just do get a little bit complicated. But this album, as I say, ranked it very highly, and with very good reason, because it's an absolute beast of an album. Kicking off with that intro that really kind of builds it up. I think it's actually called Worship. And then later on in the album, depending on if you're streaming it or if you have it on CD, copy, or whatever, MP3, you've then got like Worship 2. There's a couple of interludes on this album. Into Earth on Hell, which is just killer. Absolutely love it. Some really crunchy riffs here. Of course, this is the return album of Joey Belladonna on vocals. Absolute legend. Sounding really good here. Still sounds good to this day. Then we've got The Devil You Know, which is just amazing. I love that intro. I love that intro to that. The kind of the way it builds, and you get this really kind of thrashing, grooving riff coming in there. Love it. Fight 'Em Till You Can't is obviously a bit of a big hit for the band from this album. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm Alive. In the End, brilliant, kind of mid-paced. Judas Priest is massive. Crawl. Yeah. Revolution Screams is a great way to close the album. It's a fantastic one. Absolutely love it. If by any chance you haven't come across this one, do check it out. And actually, I think still currently on Amazon, this album's about £17. So really, really, really worth it. Love it. Worship Music from 2011. And then bringing us right up to date chronologically, this album actually came out in 2016, so 10 years ago this year. This is For All Kings. For All Kings, again, ranked very highly for me. This is a fantastic album. Absolutely brilliant. They just seem to have really found their sound again. It's a bit of a mix of the earlier, thrashier sound. They're combining that kind of groove style there, some traditional heavy metal, speed metal in there. They've just nailed it. I really feel they've nailed it with these particular two comeback albums. For All Kings here, again, this is 2025 reissue, Nuclear Blast. One of the billions of Nuclear Blast reissues from 2025. I say that like I haven't been totally sucked into it, because I have. I've seized the opportunity to have some great albums on vinyl that I would have otherwise had to pay insane money for to have got like a second-hand copy from the original run. This has a cool color scheme. Again, transparent. Not massively heavyweight, I will say, but it does feel very light. but it's a cool kind of transparent orange. Orangey yellow. I like it. I think it looks bold. Very fitting with the album artwork there, where we've got that almost stained glass window effect there, and the yellow logo. And this is a great album. When it came out, again, there was a lot of hype, a lot of talk about it. I was slow to get into this one, I must admit, shamefully. I won't show both of the vinyls off because they are the same colour scheme. Like I said, there was a lot of talk about this one, and I was a little bit slow to get into it. But when I finally really did delve into this one, totally, I'm there. You've got to believe into Monster at the end. Fantastic way to kick off the album. For All Kings, amazing. Breathing Lightning, colossally good. Suzerain and Evil Twin, a couple of highlights there. Blood Eagle Wings is a nasty piece of work. Defend Avenge, all of them thieves, The Battle Chose Us, Zero Tolerance, start to finish, not a dud moment. Not a bad track there at all. Absolutely fantastic. Anthrax still going strong. One day that new album will come out. They've been talking about the follow-up to For All Kings for probably what feels like a decade now. One day we'll get the new album, but until then, this still satisfies, more than satisfies, the taste for Anthrax. So there we have the 3 Anthrax vinyls. Now, moving on to Slayer. You might be thinking, got to be Rain and Blood, got to be Show No Mercy, got to be Hell Awaits, even Divine Intervention, a favourite of mine. Actually, the most recent and final studio album, released in 2015, this is Repentless. Now, I will say, this is actually the 2025 10th anniversary edition, which is, to read the full bio there, it is 180 gram silver themed artwork, vinyl, crystal clear and silver red splatter vinyl, limited to 3,400 copies. Why they needed to include that, I don't know, because 3,400 copies is quite a lot. You might be wondering why I picked this up. As I saw recently, it is on Amazon for nearly £30. I actually stumbled upon this when it was up for pre-order and it was $12.99. So I thought, I'm going to take a chance. Might end up with a CD or something instead. No, sure enough, it came. And it's a nice gatefold. Got the full album there. And I will show the colour scheme. Here we are. And it does feel like a nice heavy-duty vinyl. The colour scheme is pretty cool. It's not breathtaking, I must admit. But you've got some cool red splatter there on and silver on a clear vinyl. Neat. But I will say that I feel that this album gets a lot of unfair criticism. Again, I have ranked the studio albums, the full-length albums of Slayer, and I love Slayer, absolutely love Slayer. Who doesn't love Slayer? They are an absolutely essential band. They are one of the best bands, surely certainly one of the best thrash metal bands. Just remembered we have got an insert in here as well with the original art. As I was saying, I love Slayer, adore Slayer. This album, I think, is a very good album. I think it's a very fine album. And I think what we need to keep in mind when we're tackling this album, there was a lineup change, quite a significant lineup change, of course, for this album, due to a number of reasons. Of course, the late, great Jeff Hanneman passed away before this album. We've got a stellar catalogue. This album was having to follow on from some absolutely essential albums, some truly benchmark albums. The early years, of course, Hell Awaits, Rain and Blood, South of Heaven, Show No Mercy, right the way through the brilliant and underrated Divine Intervention, the turbulent era where we had, Diabolos in Musica, which is a great album, God Hates Us All, into Christ Illusions, the amazing well-painted Blood. You cannot compare this album necessarily to any of those because they are, in their own right, absolutely brilliant. And this album is also, in its own right, a brilliant album. We might have had lineup changes, but we have a very solid lineup here. So, of course, we have the great Gary Holt on guitars alongside Kerry King. Gary filling in, shall we say, for Jeff Hanneman, who is sadly no longer with us, taken far too soon. But Gary Holt, absolute legend. Exodus, main man, thrash machine, absolute riff master, absolute legend. And then we've got Paul Bostaff back on drums, an amazing drummer. And of course, he had previously had a stint with the band and did a fine job during that period. Absolutely fine job on Divine Intervention, of course. And I think revisiting this album has been really interesting because there's not much wrong with it. I will say it doesn't have the same spite and venom, if you like, as the early albums do. But are we surprised? You know, this is 30 years, around 30 years since some of those absolutely essential benchmark albums. Can we really expect that they're necessarily going to be just sounding the same? No, this still sounds like Slayer. And I think that intro of Delusions of Savior into Repentless is just, that's just pure Slayer. That's just absolutely divine, if you can say that. Take Control was brilliant. Vices is fantastic. I love Cast the First Stone into When the Stillness Comes. That's pure, eerie, sinister Slayer. At their dark, dark side right there, their darkest. Chasing Death is amazing. Implode, great track. Love that. Piano Wire is just a pure, riffy chug fest. I adore that. Atrocity Vendor is amazing. You Against You and Pride and Prejudice. Fantastic. Top-notch Slayer. I would not say that this is their best work by any means, but I would say that Repentless deserves a whole lot more love than it gets. This is an underrated album, a very fine album with some very fine tracks on there. And this is a cool 10th anniversary. If you could pick it up as cheap as I did, or even up to 20 quid, I'd say it's well worth it. It's a very good album, in my opinion. So Repentless from 2015, the last, so far, the last full-length album from the mighty Slayer. Lastly then, we have a very non-thrash album from one of the pioneers of thrash, Load from Metallica. This is the Load remastered vinyl on, as it says here, Poor Twisted Orange 2 LP. So let's just establish this. This is an interesting album. Okay, so after the Black Album, the all-important, genre-defining, world-changing Black Album, Metallica stepped even further away from the thrash metal sound of their earlier years, and they explored more kind of hard rock direction, which is fine. I've actually got an original copy here, good old-fashioned copy, and remind myself of the year. This is 1996. This album originally came out. So, wow, that's quite a long time ago now, 30 years ago. And as Metallica have been doing, they have now remastered and reissued Load in vinyl format and CD format, which I've also recently picked up. Get onto that in a moment. Now, this is a really interesting one because I had a lot of mixed feelings about this album for a long time, and I have way back when ranked the albums of Metallica, ranking this album very low down. I think because of the brilliance of a lot of their other albums, of course, it probably would still rank quite low. But I think I have been overly hard and harsh on this album in the past. I think there's actually a lot to it, which is important and really quite good. Actually, if we can just get away from the fact that this is the band that produced Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All, even Death Magnetic and Hardwired. If we can get away from that, this is actually a really good album in its own right. With tracks like the brilliant opening duo of Ain't My Bitch and 2x4, those are swaggering, rocking, hard rocking tracks. They're really good, actually. And the whole production, certainly on this remaster, sounds really good. It sounds big. It Sounds absolutely massive, in fact, courtesy of Bob Rock and Hetfield and Ulrich. Some truly emotive material from The House That Jack Built and Until It Sleeps. We've got the rocking anthem of King Nothing, brilliant Hero of the Day, the even better Bleeding Me, and then even the second side, you've got Cure, which is fantastic, Poor Twisted Me, which is pretty awesome, Wasting My Hate, Torn Within, Ronnie, and the Outlaw Torn. Really quite good stuff, actually, and this is a nice package. They've done a really quite good job here, I will say. So I picked this up when it plummeted in price on Amazon, sort of, I don't know, latter 2025. So I decided to pick it up. I will show it off as the full package. So we've got some inserts here. I think, certainly for me, discovering this album, I just couldn't quite get on board with the massive departure from the thrash sound. I think I'm just always going to be more drawn towards those thrashier Metallica albums because I'm primarily more interested in the thrash. That said, this is good. So this is the Poor Twisted Orange vinyl. It's heavy duty and it looks awesome. Much better quality, shall we say, than some of the Nuclear Blast reissues, which, sorry, not massively impressed with the colour scheme of, or the splatter quality of, not actually including the ones I've just shown off there. I think the Slayer one could certainly have been a bit better, but this is really cool, really premium stuff. So we've got another, obviously a double vinyl, it's a massively long album. Another insert for second side there, or the second disc, I should say. And again, kept it the same. Poor Twisted Orange. Really cool. Good quality vinyl. And actually, this has been a very cathartic experience. Myself, like many other Metallica fans or just fans of heavy music, will have different opinions on this album. Certainly takes me back to some years and some times in my life I don't necessarily want to revisit. So this has been a really cathartic experience checking this album out, really delving back into it. And I will say I've been pleasantly surprised. Metallica did all right with this. I think clearly needed to, creatively, to branch out in different directions. And whether you like it or not, it's still a very big popular album. So that's the vinyl format. I did also pick up, again, it plummeted in price, the CD copy. So just like with Master of Puppets and Justice for All, the Black Album, they've done it as a triple disc. So you get here a very good sounding remaster of the original album, and it does actually sound really good. I will say, compared to the original, there is a bit of a difference there. I think the original still sounded pretty good, but there's definitely a difference. Second disc is riffs, demos, and rough mixes, which is by no means essential listening, but it's certainly interesting if you are a fan. If you are a Metallica fan, and more importantly, a fan of Load, yeah, you're probably going to appreciate that. But it's certainly not the kind of disc that is going to get a new fan or someone, make them a new fan of the band, get someone absolutely hooked. The third disc is Poor Touring Me, which is live tracks. So majority of which are obviously from Load. So the live tracks are, I believe they're sort of from 95 to 97. We do actually get a couple of tracks from the follow-up album, Reload. So we've got Devil's Dance and Fuel. We've also got Overkill, of course. A frequent live version they like to deliver. And then we've got a Kill and Ride medley as well. Cool stuff. Again, not essential, but it's sounding good and enjoyable enough if you are a fan. So some cool stuff. And I feel like I've actually come back round to really appreciate this album in a different way. You're never going to be able to top those first 4/5 albums, depending on how you feel about the Black Album. You're never going to be able to top those. But I think they did better than I give them or have given them credit for in the past with Load. There it is. Right, so there we have it. That's all for this collection update. Pretty cool assortment of albums, I'd say. We've come for you all. A great one. A really nice vinyl version, actually, and a solid Anthrax offering. Doesn't quite top this absolute monster. This is Worship Music. 2 vinyl of just pure Anthrax awesomeness. The absolutely fantastic For All Kings. Anthrax really were on fine form with that one. Slayer, still on fine form, in my opinion. Gone through the changes, gone through the ups and downs and hardships, but Repentless, I think, kills. It's a nasty piece of work. In its 10th anniversary form there, it's looking cool. And, of course, Load. Interesting album that I think I've grown to really appreciate for its own reasons, on its own merit. So, my friends, what are your thoughts and opinions on these albums, these bands? Do get involved. Interested to hear thoughts and opinions of others, as always. Thank you very much for watching this humble collection update. Hope you've enjoyed it. Feel free to like, subscribe, share, comment. Support is greatly appreciated, as always. Check back soon for more reviews and recommendations of all those good heavy things. Till next time, take care of yourselves. Stay freaking heavy.